Welcome to Anews. I'm Taslim and you're watching Turkish Diplomacy. On today's episode, I'll be joined by Dr. Mehmet Çelik, the editorial coordinator of Daily Sabah, and Dr. Tolga Sakman, the chairman of the Center for Diplomatic Affairs and Political Studies based in Istanbul. We'll take a look at the latest developments from Turkey and the war in Gaza. But before we begin our discussions, let's take a look at this news report.
Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is in Russia for high-level talks with President Vladimir Putin and Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, focusing on the Ukraine conflict and key regional developments. The visit follows recent discussions between Russian and Ukrainian officials in Istanbul that resulted in major prisoner exchange. Fidan is expected to emphasize Turkey's continued commitment to securing a just and lasting peace in the Russia-Ukraine war and to reaffirm Ankara's readiness to serve as a mediator in future negotiations. The meetings are also covering bilateral relations, including cooperation in trade, energy, and tourism. During his visit, Fidan is holding additional talks with senior Russian officials such as Defense Minister Andrei Belousov and Presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky. The agenda includes regional and global issues, particularly developments in Syria, Gaza, and the South Caucasus. Turkey has long maintained dialogue with both Moscow and Kyiv, aiming to reduce tensions and promote diplomacy amidst ongoing hostilities.
Welcome back to the program. Dr. Mehmet Çelik, a very warm welcome to you as well.
Thank you, Mark.
Mehmet Çelik, let's start with Hakan Fidan, the Turkish foreign minister. He's in Russia. Yesterday he met President Putin and his counterpart Sergei Lavrov. Now, how important is this visit, Mehmet, considering that we recently saw the prisoners were being exchanged from both sides? And then, you know, the tensions are also rising. Over the weekend, Russia launched a massive attack, not only on Kyiv, but also on regional areas. So how are you looking at this meeting, Mehmet?
Well, as you know, last week, a few days ago, basically, there was a huge hope that when the sides got together in Istanbul, that this will translate into something like a ceasefire or maybe a new diplomatic initiative will begin for a ceasefire. But unfortunately, the hopes were raised very high, but we only have the glass half full, with only the prisoners exchange, 1,000 of prisoners from each side being exchanged, and the willingness to begin these ceasefire at least was voiced in the meeting in Istanbul, where Marco Rubio was also here, Mr. Fidan also participated, and the officials from both Ukrainian and Russian side. But the empty side of the glass was that, you know, the expected ceasefire didn't actually begin, nor did the leaders come together, Mr. Zelensky or Mr. Putin. Mr. Trump was also saying that he may even come, but nevertheless, they didn't get together. Now, if we want an end to this war, I think all sides agree that it won't be the arms that will bring an end to this conflict, but it is the diplomacy that will bring an end to this war that has been going on since 2022. And Turkey, as an actor in this region and a very influential actor that has been carrying out a leadership in this diplomatic initiative, I think, as a side that, as an actor that is equally able to meet both sides and have the trust of both sides, it has been carrying the shuttle diplomacy to bring this conflict to an end through diplomacy. So Mr. Fidan traveled to Moscow, where he met Mr. Putin and is going to have meetings with Mr. Lavrov. But I think that the ties between Russia and Turkey are not, of course, limited to the Ukraine war. There's many other important topics and important developments in our region, beginning with Syria, what's happening with Gaza, the trade relationships or other transactional relationship between Turkey and Russia was also discussed, I assume, in this meeting. There wasn't a press conference, so we haven't really heard the details of the meeting. But nevertheless, of course, Ukraine is the key item on the agenda, and Turkey is trying its best to bring this conflict in its neighborhood. I mean, Black Sea is Turkey's shore. So what happens in that conflict is bringing the chaos or bringing some tensions to Turkey's borders as well. Turkey does not want this tension to continue anymore, as it's affecting not only the neighborhood, but I think it also brings the international community to a tense moment. I mean, what happened over the weekend or in the past couple of days that has not helped this diplomatic initiative to come to an end. Mr. Trump, his remarks say, about Mr. Putin, and then Mr. Putin's remarks about as he's trying to legitimize the most recent attacks. I think all sides need this exit strategy, but all sides, I think, are trying to leverage their position by intensifying the tensions, by making the tensions even boil even harder. But Turkey is trying to carry out its historic mission regarding, mediating between the two sides and bringing this conflict to an end through diplomacy and through a diplomatic common ground where all sides can have. I think the sides need this facilitation where a platform is needed. I mean, look what happened in Istanbul. The sides came together, and a prisoners exchange took place. Mr. Trump was almost coming here to Istanbul. If similar actions take place, I think the war will come to an end, or at least a ceasefire, a permanent ceasefire, or a ceasefire that could act as a platform for the future steps towards the end of the war can take place. But without diplomacy, I think the conflict only gets harder.
Mehmet, like you mentioned earlier as well, the American president had some statements for both leaders. He called Putin crazy, and then he said that Zelensky is being stubborn, and the way he's negotiating will not lead to any ceasefire. So do you think that President Donald Trump, is running out of patience because he has the war in Gaza as well to look at, and then there's this war between Ukraine and Russia. So do you think that he's running out of patience because people expect him to solve all of these issues?
Well, Mr. Trump, he pledged to end the war within 24 hours. I mean, of course, the time was extended afterwards. But one of his key pledges during his election campaign was to bring an end to this war and to bring an end to all wars and not to initiate any new ones. His language is not a very diplomatic one. So the fact that he called Mr. Putin crazy and stubborn to Mr. Zelensky, this is Trump's normal language. But I think overall he's frustrated. He's frustrated because he cannot answer to home his voter base or people that supported him at home. Because he had this pledge about bringing an end to this Ukraine war. Nevertheless, there's a few things I think he has on his agenda in his mind. One is to bring an end to this war so he doesn't have to deal with it when he thinks he has bigger issues like China to deal with. Ukraine brings this, it acts as a burden on his shoulder right now. Mr. Trump sees Ukraine situation as an issue that he is just keeping him busy for when he doesn't have any interest in it, when there is no return in the investment in the Ukraine war. This is how he sees it as a businessman leading the conflict from the United States. Nevertheless, I think he knows that both sides will not be easily compromising their position. I mean, the maximalist position of Russia. On the other hand, there is the Ukrainian leader that thinks his country has been invaded and he wants to make sure that he can answer to his people. So their positions are both very firm. But I think the reality is different. On the real politics will have the other meanings when it comes to Trump's pressure on Ukraine and what they need to compromise. The other important factor here is the European position with regards to Ukraine and how Zelensky is trying to mostly align with their position, and that's a non-compromising position from European side as well. So I think Zelensky's position is between, he's in a way that he's stuck between Europe and on the one hand and the United States on the other hand, and his home base, the Ukrainian people on the other hand. So he's in a rather difficult position when it comes to compromise or what this exit strategy will look like. Nevertheless, diplomacy is something that requires time. Trump is frustrated, but I think he knows that it won't be an easy, a ceasefire can be established, but the actual problem at its core between Ukraine and Russia, it's not something that will be solved overnight.
Mehmet, like you just said, that Trump is looking at this war as a business deal. When he's talking to Ukraine, when he's talking to Russia, he's looking at it as a business deal. There was something similar a few weeks ago between India and Pakistan as well. When tensions were rising, both sides attacked one another. Trump called and he said, if you guys will stop, I'll do trade with you, a lot of trade. These were his words. Now, the Pakistani Prime Minister, he was in Istanbul over the weekend. Now, Mehmet, don't you think that when Pakistan increases its ties with Turkey, the Indians look at it as interference? Because previously, Turkey had good relations with both India and Pakistan. It still has good relations with both of the countries. But don't you think that if the Pakistani Prime Minister comes and visits President Erdogan, the Indian side would look at it as interference? When we talk about the Kashmir issue, Indians would say that Turkey is trying to, interfere in our relations, in the situation that we have in the occupied Kashmir. So how are you looking at this meeting between Prime Minister Sharif and President Erdogan?
Well, Prime Minister Sharif's visit, it's an important visit because Turkey has not only very strong historic relations and religious and cultural or social relations with Pakistan, but it also has very strong diplomatic relations as well as military relations. And when it comes to defense industry, Turkey has strong relations with Pakistan. His visit is symbolic in the sense that he felt Turkey's support when it comes to this very recent conflict between the two sides that have been, in conflict over Kashmir issue or over border issues for many decades. And this issue is the Kashmir issue and the issue between Pakistan and India over Kashmir. It's separate issue when it comes to Turkey's relations with both sides. Nevertheless, this relationship between Pakistan and Turkey is also in line with Turkey's Southeast Asia foreign policy. Mr. Erdogan was very recently there, and he was very welcomed in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Pakistan. And this is a reflection of that strong ties, strong bonding, and the relationship between Turkey and Pakistan, and how Turkey is viewed from that part of the region, but also how Turkey puts an importance to its allies in that region. Pakistan is a nuclear force to begin with. So Turkey's alliance or Turkey's partnership or cooperation with those countries is very important, and it's in line with its foreign policy. Nevertheless, Turkey acknowledges also that India is a superpower or a very big power in the, and the future multipolar world will have a very large area allocated to India, be it economically or otherwise. So Turkey also acknowledges this reality about India, and this is why I think, although there was these propaganda from India regarding Turkey's position with Pakistan, which should be accepted because Turkey has had very good relations, very strong relations for many decades, for about over 100 years or more with India or Indian Muslims. Pakistan and Pakistani Muslims. But Turkey also knows India's relationship between Turkey and Pakistan should not be mixed with Turkey's relationship with India simply over Kashmir issue. Kashmir issue is a very important issue in Turkey's foreign policy agenda. Turkey wants to, Turkey is in line with, actually Turkey's position is in line with the UN resolutions. Turkey is only not siding with either side, but it's siding with what international community has accepted for Kashmir. And this is what it has been saying since late 40s. So with regards to how India is reacting to Turkey, I think it's very sentimental, but at the same time, India should, while Turkey is acknowledging India's position, and this is why it's acting reasonably, I think very moderately, not just get on the bandwagon of Pakistan and propagating or siding very exclusively or explicitly with Pakistan. It still shows support, but it also calls for calm intentions, and this is how India should see Turkey, given Turkey's geopolitical position, given Turkey's global position in the multipolar world that we are going to transform into. I think the two sides need to have this pragmatic relationship when it comes to India and Turkey relationship, putting aside Kashmir and Pakistan issue, and do not let that interfere. Nevertheless, I think this was, Turkey's position with regards to Pakistan also gives a message to the international community, especially the Muslim world, with regards to Turkey's leadership in the region and Turkey's prestige and Turkey's trustworthiness when it comes to partnership with Turkey.
Mehmet, thanks for that analysis. Now let's take a look at this news report and we'll be right back.
Clashes broke out in the walled Old City of Jerusalem on Monday during the annual Flag March, a rally that marks Jerusalem Day, when Israel captured the city's east in the 1967 war. Tens of thousands of people dressed in white and blue had descended into Jerusalem for the march, including National Security Minister Ben-Gvir, where Israeli flags waved in the sky and chants echoed. However, the marchers, mostly young Israelis who live in settlements in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, began targeting left-wing Israeli activists and journalists observing the rally. Witnesses say marchers clashed with activists who had intervened to escort Palestinians away from young far-right Israeli Jews, threatening passers-by. A spokesperson for the Palestinian presidency based in the West Bank condemned the march and Gvir's visit to Al-Aqsa, a compound administered by a Jordanian Islamic trust. The march frequently stokes tension as ultra-nationalist Jews stream into Palestinian areas of Jerusalem's walled Old City en route to the Western Wall. The war in Gaza, now in its 20th month, has ramped up recently as Israel effectively ended a January ceasefire agreement with Hamas and renewed its military campaign there. Also on Monday, a Palestinian official said that Hamas had agreed to a proposal by U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff for a Gaza ceasefire, only for an Israeli official to deny that the proposal was Washington's and that no Israeli government could accept it. Witkoff also rejected the notion that Hamas had accepted his offer and told Reuters the proposal being discussed was not the same as his. The Palestinian official, who was close to Hamas, told Reuters the proposal would see the release of 10 hostages and a 70-day ceasefire. Hamas has said it is willing to free all remaining hostages seized and agree to a permanent ceasefire if Israel pulls out completely from Gaza.
Welcome back to the program. Now let's take a look at the front page of Daily Sabah. Dr. Mehmet, obviously Israel has always been a top headline, not only for us, but for newspapers and news channels around the world. Now another strike, over 100 people have been killed since Sunday, and the latest attack that we saw, in fact, the videos that we're watching every day, they're extremely horrible. You know, you don't have words to explain how difficult it is to watch those attacks. Let's start with that, Mehmet. Let's start with this one. Hamas reportedly accepts U.S. Gaza truce proposal, but Israel remains silent.
Well, yesterday, I mean, Hamas told the U.S. Side that this proposal that they had with regards to hostages, they will actually, they accepted that, and then the 10 hostages will be returned in exchange for 70 days of truce. But of course, the Israeli side, as far as we know, it has not responded to that positively. You were talking about the images, as it is on our headline as well. People burning alive in 2025. This is something that the history is recording minute by minute, and it is being live streamed, and the whole world is watching basically without doing anything, without being able to do anything actually, when babies or civilians, people are being burned alive while in their beds or in their homes or in their tents. And the whole world is watching, Omar. This is something that is very hard for me to comprehend when we are talking about 2025, when we're talking about, human rights, when we're talking about war crimes, international human rights. These things become very meaningless when all these actions are taking place and nobody's actually able to do anything more than even, let alone do anything. There's countries that support this. There's countries that provide logistics. There's countries that provide arms and economic and political support behind this genocide taking place in Gaza. I mean, too little, too late. Some European countries and the Western countries are now voicing their, opposition against this. When we are seeing famine taking place, when we're seeing hunger, people dying from having no food in 2025. This is something that, in the early 90s or earlier, we would see images coming from Africa due to drought and people having a deal with famine and etc. But there were conflicts there too, of course. But now this is taking place by one of the most advanced, as they call it, quote unquote, the most advanced democracies in the Middle East, a country that has the most advanced military equipment, and doing this against civilians, unarmed civilians, where they try to do every single kind of harm to these people. I mean, there is no humanitarian access. There is no medical access. Journalists are being killed. Medics are being killed. People burned alive. I mean, the images that you mentioned, some of the videos that come from there, they are too graphic to even watch. But this is taking place. This is a reality, a genocide taking place before the world's eyes. And I think we are all complicit if we are not standing against this genocide. And at Daily Sabah, what we try to do is to expose this reality all the time about what is taking place in this conflict or in other conflicts around the world. I mean, Gaza is a very dark moment and that will be remembered by the future generations. And all those who support it or remain idle when this is taking place will be recorded as complicit people as well.
Mehmet, exactly. Every day we're watching new videos. For example, people being taken to the hospital on top of donkey carts, or just recently we saw how a doctor who was treating other patients lost 9 of her children during an Israeli airstrike. So
heartbreaking images come from there, and the famine is something that we don't talk about as much as we should, I think. But there is kids who are like few pounds only, despite their older age. There's people more than 300 people have been, killed, I would say. I would use the word killed due to malnourishment or due to hunger. This is, hunger is being used as a weapon against Palestinians. Of course, they're dropping bombs. Of course, they're carrying out airstrikes. But hunger and limiting humanitarian access or medical access is also this is also a weapon used against Palestinian people. But let's hope that this will come to an end soon. But I think the only actor that can bring an end to this is the United States, where if they do not put pressure on the war cabinet in Tel Aviv, I'm afraid the expansion will not only be limited to depopulating Gaza, but it also moves to the other place. I mean, there's a lot of activity taking place, or a lot of these violence taking place in West Bank as well. As the focus is shifted to Gaza, I mean, we know that the raid took place in Jerusalem and the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. I mean, these are some of the things that should be condemned by the whole international community, but a pressure should be also applied. Just condemning this, carrying out protests, unless they translate into some policy changes, it becomes meaningless.
Mehmet, also, let's talk about the coup, the anniversary of the coup that Turkey is celebrating today. It's the 65th anniversary of the May 27th coup. Tell us more about that.
65 years ago, Turkey had one of its darkest moments where it affected structural, the democratic structure of Turkey, where a democratically elected prime minister was hung and he was executed and by a coup against his government. Turkey had suffered many times from these coups, which were, we had this military tutelage over the elected officials, and what wasn't in line with their own ideology or interests would not survive, regardless of them being elected by the people democratically. And in 1960, this coup took place in May 27. Today is the anniversary, 65th anniversary, where Mr. Adnan Menderes, Prime Minister then, he was executed with some of his friends. And after that, many times Turkey suffered from these coups that traditionally every 10 years we had a coup against the elected officials. After the July 15 coup attempt in 2016, I think that attempt showed that people now hold on to democracy stronger, hold on to their elected officials stronger, where they defeated the FETÖ coup attempt against Turkish democracy and Turkish elected officials and Mr. Erdogan. So since then, I think many things have shifted, but I think what became more significant over the recent years is that over the past 2 decades is that military tutelage over the elected officials, regardless of their political affiliations, the civilian politics have more space now. They have more room to voice their democratic remarks. Before, this wasn't the case, of course, and this has changed over the past 2 decades, even though this military tutelage the room for them was minimized and civilian politics became more active. Still, and this is something that is very important, where the coups in Turkey have outside support in many cases, and almost in all cases, and they tried their last time in July 15 coup attempt, and this was also supported by some of the actors outside of Turkey, as the group that carried out or attempted to carry out this coup has had the Western capitals as safe havens, the members and the sympathizers of this group. Nevertheless, the May 27th is, I think, a date that should be remembered and not be forgotten, to see what happens when you do not leave any room for democracy and democratically elected officials, where you put the power in the hands of those who are not elected, and the military taking over becomes very easy.
Mehmet, thanks for that analysis. We'll continue to keep an eye out on all these headlines. There's Israel, Russia, even whatever Turkey is doing at the moment. Thank you for that analysis. Now let's take a look at this news report, and we'll be right back.
The Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson said that Iran will not consider temporarily suspending uranium enrichment to secure a nuclear deal with the United States, adding that no date had yet been set for a 6th round of talks with Washington. The negotiations between Washington and Tehran aim to resolve a decades-long dispute over Iran's nuclear ambitions, and both sides have taken a tough stance in public over the issue of Iran's uranium enrichment. President Donald Trump said that the United States negotiators had very good talks with an Iranian delegation over the weekend. Iran is waiting for further details from mediator Oman regarding the timing of the next round of talks. Trump wants to curtail Tehran's potential to produce a nuclear weapon that could trigger a regional nuclear arms race and perhaps threaten Israel. Iran, for its part, maintains its nuclear program as exclusively for civilian purposes and wants to be rid of devastating sanctions on its oil-based economy.
Welcome back to the program. Joining us now from Istanbul is Dr. Tolga Sakman. He is the chairman of the Center for Diplomatic Affairs and Political Studies. Dr. Tolga, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mark.
Dr. Tolga, let's start with Iran. Ever since Trump visited the Middle East, the attention and the focus has been on Iran. Now, Iran says that it will not abandon its nuclear uranium enrichment program for a nuclear deal. So how are you looking at the latest developments from Iran and the decisions that President Trump has been spreading?
Yes, actually, the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, is a moderate leader, and he is particularly keen for the talks to be concluded and more sanctions to be lifted, because Iran is getting more and more squeezed economically, especially nowadays. However, there are internal and external factors that challenge the Iranian leadership in this negotiation process. When we look at the external factors, first of all, the inconsistent actions of the Trump administration stand out. I mean, even during the negotiation, and even if there is an agreement, Trump may take steps that will complicate this process, so it can be cracked all things in this process. Of course, the other factor, the external factor, is Israel. The nuclear research and studies in question are believed to be a deterrent for Israel. They are believing like this. When we look at the domestic factors, first of all, the regime wants to be strong at the negotiation table to ensure its own security, research and work. This nuclear research and works authorized by the religious leader, as you know, can only be stopped by his own order. This means revoking the fatwa, and also, you know, the fatwa is so important for the regime of Iran. And this would not only undermine the religious authority of the supreme leader Khamenei, but also put his political position in the question by fulfilling the wishes of an adversary like the United States. They are calling United States, as you know, the big enemy of the country. For these and also the other reasons, the negotiations are being conducted with very delicate diplomacy, and the slighted snack is stalling the process. I think the negotiations will continue. They may be slow, or they may change the shape, but Washington and Tehran expect a positive outcome. Thus, the West will get rid of a nuclear threat. The U.S. will more relaxed in the regional policies. The Iranian market will be included in the global economy, and an order will be created that benefits everyone. I think the Iranian parts and the U.S. parts already want this type of agreement. Also, of course, these are all expectations, not just for me, for the both parts. On the other hand, the Israel has repeatedly declared that it wants a war with Iran. With the negative outcome of these negotiations, the Netanyahu administration thinks that it will strengthen its hands for this type of war. In order to prevent such a war, the U.S. is taking political steps to stop Israel, because such an escalation would be contrary to order the U.S. is trying to establish in the Middle East, and would change the Trump administration's foreign policy, which is based on economics. As you know, all the foreign policy based on the economic issues nowadays for Trump administration, not only in the Middle East, globally. For this reason, the U.S. will first silence the Netanyahu, get the voice down for Netanyahu administration, and then take steps to calm the region. This will be an important development for the acceleration and positive outcome of these negotiations, I think.
Tolga, let's talk about Syria. On the weekend, Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara, he met Turkish President Erdogan. There were many discussions. They included about those discussions included restructuring of Syria, the future of Syria, how to fight the small terror groups that are still present. So how are you looking at that meeting? What can we say what can we achieve, or what can both of these sides achieve from these meetings, and what new avenues of cooperation could open from these talks?
Yeah. As you know, Turkey wants a stable and strong government in Syria at the beginning of this process. It believes that only in this way can the security of both Syria and the region be ensured, not in Syrian territory. Ankara is thinking these strong governments for all the region, I think. For this reason, it supports the Damascus administration steps to strengthen both in home and abroad at the same time. The statement about this meeting included some generic expressions. While I'm saying generic, Ankara's position, which has been in place since the beginning, as I said before, was repeated in this statement after the meeting, because this visit is, how can I say, I believe the timing and the manner of this meeting has a different impact. This visit, which was not planned and announced beforehand, is actually important to show the rapid contact and cooperation between the two countries. It's a good image for the global view, I think. And in addition, the al-Shara's visit to Istanbul after the several visits abroad, the Saudi Arabia and European countries, provided an opportunity to discuss the steps that have been taken and will be taken. And two most important issues, the first of all, the Syrian economy, and the second is Syrian security and defense. We already understand this from the discussions during this visit, because in this visit in Turkey, al-Shara and his delegation met with the economic as well as defense and security, defense and the defense industry officials in Turkish the meetings. In order to revitalize and strengthen the Syrian economy, Turkey supported the lifting of sanctions by both the US and Europe. The economic revitalizations will both support Turkey-Syria economic relations and contribute to welfare of the Syrian society. This contribution is so valuable because the social welfare has a positive impact on the both stable policy of the Damascus administration and the security of the whole country, both sides. Security is an issue that Turkey perhaps supports more directly because Ankara provides political support to Damascus on issues such as the preservation of the Syria's territorial integrity, preventing the continued existence of any terrorist organization in the country, and also stopping Israel's aggression of Syrian territory. These three sections is so important while we are talking on the security and the defense of the Syria. And also these all on political sides. While we are talking on the ground, Turkey supports for the long-awaiting process of the rebuilding, training, and equipping the Syrian army. Seems to have been discussions more concretely in, especially on this meeting, I think. In addition, an agreement on defense and security cooperation between the two countries has yet to be signed. We are all waiting for this agreement. But these in-depth discussions, creating the perception that such an agreement would be more inclusive and effective. While we are talking on this meeting, I would like to recall three critical names in the Turkish delegation: the Minister of the National Defense, the Chief of the Turkish Intelligence, and the head of the Turkish defense industry. These three names are so important, and these participants alone, just these three names, may indicate that the framework of the new cooperation process is expanding and its impact is growing, I think.
Dr. Tolga Sakman, thank you for being on the program. It was a pleasure listening to your analysis.
Thank you for having me.
Dr. Mehmet Çelik, thank you to you as well. It was a pleasure having you on the program.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our program. Thank you for joining us. Bye for now.